So this lecture is about how our culture is undermining our knowledge that we follow the norms of the true love. Yeah? How does it become undermined so that we forget what works for us? We forget that which gives us most joy, most happiness, most blessings. So this lecture is about this, and this process across cultures, the Western cultures especially, are being seriously undermined, and we're forgetting fast who we are and what brings about. So this is this is who we technically get the best from. This is what best outcomes. It doesn't mean there's no suffering, doesn't mean there's no difficulties, because we as human beings, we understand that we suffer. Unlike puffins or other species, that they don't, in some senses, they just go through it. They just endure it. An albatross that has to fly 1,000 kilometers through the wind and rain and cold to get a stomach full of food for its child just does it. Yeah? But we know we suffer, and we know that pain, and we have choices. And so that's the challenge for human beings, that we suffer, and in the midst of that suffering, we still rise to follow the noble path. That's our challenge. But it's so easy to drop it. So throughout history, you know, most couples are struggling and economically, and weather, and oppressive lords, and all kinds of things have happened to them, but their family structure somehow allowed them to keep their communities together and keep it going to some extent. And it's, but the more that we connected with the forces of the internal forces of our species norm, the more we could overcome these things. Now Marx's economic theory, he's Karl Marx, he toured England, you know, a couple of centuries ago, I can't remember exactly, and he saw the poverty, he saw the mess, and he felt awful about it, and he said there must be a quick fix. We have to fix this right now. And the way we fix it is to have a revolution. And we get the money from the rich, we spread it around. That's the way it happens. That will work. That will work. Of course, that undermines our natural puffin norm of said developmental north of, which is through the child. How does the child become more noble? How do they grow so that the society can grow with it? That's the problem. It undermines it. But also economic theory, it redefines the internal workings. So this is, because this technically what works for puffins, but he said, no, we don't need that anymore. We don't need this anymore. So he said, you can't keep most of what you catch. You can't. You have to share it around. It belongs to everybody. Your hard work belongs to everybody. Your talents are useless in some senses. Yeah? You can't expect to have protection. Your house might get taken away for the Communist Party, for the good of the party, by a corrupt party official. So you said, why try? Why bother? There's no stability here. There's no incentive, no meaning. Ecosystem support, they made 5-year plans. There's committees of uneducated committee planners. And it didn't work, yeah, because the infrastructure didn't really grow, and it just failed, and you see the houses that were built, and it was just awful. So the system just failed to build an infrastructure system to support. So nobody was interested, motivated, they were robbed, and the system, and it failed, and they failed. Economically, they failed because they took away all the puffin internal elements that make our species succeed. But they said, but you have to care. You have to share. That's the only way to end this poverty. But it's not true. It's not true. We did in the West, we got rid of poverty the puffin way. By step, by improving the quality of each child. And we got out of that mess. So we don't have the slums and the sweatshops and everything else in England technically anymore, you know, etc. So Marxism, economic Marxism, denies that we have a species norm, that the best works for us. It looks compassionate. It looks like a quick fix. But it doesn't work because it doesn't ennoble the person. It undermines the ability for the person, because once the parents are demotivated, once they get demoted and alcoholic and everything, do you think the quality of the child's going to improve? No. So you destroy the child. So economic development can't happen. That's the problem. Because it's not motivating enough. This doesn't motivate us. There was a shops chain in America. They said recently, they opened it and said, okay, you can pay what you want. Pay what you want. Now you know that some homeless people come here and can't afford it. So we hope you good liberal citizens will pay more than you should do. So therefore they will sponsor the poor. They've all closed. All of them. Bankrupt. We don't do that. That's not what stirs us. What stirs us most is our connection to our loved one, because what keeps our species healthy is the one that keeps us love alive between spouses and parent-child. Those are the most important, powerful forces. And we're not built as pack animals. And if you're a pack animal, you have to rely on the pack like the wolves. If you have to rely on it to sustain, then you build strong bonds of brotherhood. But we're not pack animals. I can survive quite happily by myself, by my own talents. So we don't have that bond, strong bond of compassion towards the fellow man. And the research shows that once it goes beyond one person, once I can do that for one. But once it goes to the second, I go, my compassion drops down technically. Now I can, of course, use my wealth in charities, and that gives me a lot of meaning, because I feel like, wow, I can really use my wealth specifically for a cause that I value, and that works well. So a lot of very generous benefactors, wealthy benefactors, that run charities and foundations and everything else, they are incredibly important for society, because I am connected to the meaning of it. I know what I'm giving to. It's not just going. Not just going to something, okay, fine. There's no heart, there's no energy. So that's the problem. It doesn't work. We're not psychologically built for that, although we would like to be. We would like to be. So anyway, so in 1917, they said, let's bypass this evolutionary development of the person's nobility. Let's bypass it. Let's undermine puffin norms. And in 1959, this is what it looked like. Yeah, we had over here the communists running on the communist economic system of trying to share everything around. China had joined in, and the West was going forward on puffin norms, free market, using your talents, skills, developing the child, not demotivating the parents too much, etc., etc. Okay? But the owners and the entrepreneurs couldn't succeed using those economic principles, because they're not puffin economic principles. Couldn't succeed. Well, why invest my money if someone's going to steal it from me? Why bother? Yeah? There's no meaning here. I don't get much meaning because I'm not built to get meaning just by throwing my money around. I'm not built for that. I'm built through feeling, wow, I'm good at this. I get flow. I get joy. Oh, wow, I'm getting good at this and people like what I'm doing. And that's where it comes from, that first blessing. Not because puffins are not technically group animals. Albatrosses are. None of these true love species are. It's just the individual responsibility. I can take care of myself. Thank you very much. Just leave me alone. And so our psychology is built for the puffin norm. And no matter how much we love to say, but we should share and take care of it. No, you have to build into the norms of the structure of society so that everybody can become noble. You have to try and make sure that as many children as possible become noble. And that takes time. That's a much longer process. How do we raise noble children? That's much more complicated. So here are the 1960s buildings of Russia, and over in America, great big suburbs spreading of people's wealth and success because they felt connected to puffin norms. Their psychology is connected to, I use my talents and I can build my family and look after it, and this is my little puffin nest, and I'm happy here. Over here, they're alcoholic. Because it doesn't mean anything, because we're not built for that. So here is your good old Russian car of 1960, and here is your American Mustang, yeah? That's what happens when you let people have their passions and joys, and, oh, maybe I can make the engine work better, and maybe I can make the tires a bit better, and, oh, give me that freedom, and I'll make a bit of profit from that, and da-da. I mean, in Russia, the guy says, well, why should I do that? Because I'm just going to, the corrupt politician is going to just take the credit. We're not built for that. No matter how much we dream of a peaceful world instantly and sharing wealth around, psychologically it doesn't work for us. So here we have, yeah, this is how the West was developing. More noble people, ideally, more competent people. So what happened? Now you see, we're doing quite well. We just won World War II. West, just conquered it. We were building lovely cars, nice houses. All kinds of things were going forward. The marital family was quite strong, very strong in general. Free market, puffin norms, seemed quite well. We were doing quite well, blossoming nicely, thank you very much, based on Christian puffin norms. But of course the USSR saw that the happy, wealthy workers would never rebel against their business owners because they were too happy. They were doing well. I can feed my family. I don't have to get drunk every night just because I'm depressed. I can send my children off to college. I'm getting meaning from this. Yeah. So they realized that they decided to put 1963 made a plan, cultural Marxism, not economic Marxism, culture, to destroy the culture. And you can see this pamphlet online. It's 45 key strategies to destroy Western culture. Okay? And the Frankfurt school, which had moved from Germany just before the war, and it was now in Columbia University, was a good communist-based thing, and they used that, and they multiplied from there in America. And basically they said, break down the morality, present homosexuality as normal, encourage promiscuity, eliminate prayer, discredit the marital family. Yeah, it's on the internet. You can see this. You can see the Congress is, okay? And they've done it. The communists in Russia, 1963, said this is what we're going to do to the West. And our history in the West could have been completely different. Couldn't it? Very different. We could be having really, really incredible happy families because we have all this education now for marital families, and we could all be very rich and beautiful societies and no ghettos, and we could have been very different. But what's been decided for us by some guys in Russia 60 years ago has now become manifest in our societies. That's what's happened. And we've allowed it to happen. That's what's happened. So what's the plan? Okay, well, the Russian plan, they wanted world domination. We want to take over the world. We want to share the wealth around to all workers. That's what we want to do. So we will weaken the marital family norm and basically tell the West, you can be cats. You can be cats and have fun. You don't need a single parent cat. Catism. That's what you can call it, catism. You can be single parents and happily survive. Yeah. Then, of course, because it's not our species norm, more children will have problems. Jails, drugs, broken communities will follow. Economic well-being will suffer. Military power will decline. And the USSR can one day, the Russian, can walk in and take over the West because it's so weak. Also, as single-parent catism grows, more will rely on the welfare state. And when the communist government walks in and says, we will take that nasty wealth from that horrible rich people and share it with you, then these people will say, oh, finally we get some money because we're struggling on the poverty line here. They will welcome us. The West will welcome us. Right now we've got nuclear bombs and etc., but they will welcome us. That was their plan. So, in 1960s onwards, they decided to undermine the internal elements of the marital family. Systematically take them to pieces, one by one, destroy them in the West. All of them. So marriage couldn't survive. Take them to pieces. Abortion and contraception. Abortion was developed by Margaret Sanger, or clinics. She was a avowed communist. She set them up specifically in African American communities to destroy the communities there. Purposely. Contraception was developed by good old Rothschild money. A key person who understands how he can make money from broken families. Very interesting. So, because of abortion, premarital sex shot up, yeah? Make love, not war. Peace on earth. This is the way to build a good society. Anybody remember that? Anybody old enough to remember that? Anybody had long hair? Then, of course, in marriage, once you're married and with children, you have about a 75% chance of staying together. The divorce rate is higher because there's singles involved. But with children, because that's the key thing, 75% manage. But if you cohabit, you only have a 30%. So introducing cohabitation, which we've seen rapid growth of, okay? Yeah, you don't have to have fidelity, open relationships and this kind of thing. And cohabitation also promotes that, you know. Our species only survive, not marital norm only survives on limited divorce. Let's introduce no fault. Now, what would be an ideal marital, divorce situation is that anybody who's considering divorce should go through extensive. Because why is it? They just don't have the inner nobility and knowledge of love, how you maintain love. That's what this is, lack of knowledge, and lack of maybe some emotional issues which need healing. So when you get a couple that are divorcing and you put them through counseling and education, about 70% of the time you can save their marriage. About 70%. Now, some marriages are really it's not good for anybody. There's too much alcoholism or there's some other problem. Of course, they can separate for a while and maybe he can go for anger management or alcohol addiction or something like this. Do you understand? Yeah? So, but you just want that child to know the love. That's the key. That's how you know your system works. So you've got to fight for that. So the child has rights too in this system because it's their well-being. Their whole life ahead of them, and if they carry around that separation trauma, their life could be seriously negatively affected, just because they don't know how to squeeze a toothpaste properly, or just because he doesn't do the washing up, or so most of them. If you do teach marriage education, some of them are really silly. The things that divide couples, they can be fixed in a weekend. Sometimes you've got a problem in a system which just, they don't catch it. And a bit of counseling, a bit of education. Oh, now we know it. But divorce, and the child's whole life can be seriously affected. It's not worth the price. It's too cheap. You really have to work harder and say this child's life is at stake here. Because they're more likely to be in jail, drugged, Give it a chance. Let's throw everything we can to try and raise these nobility of the human. They obviously didn't have the nobility skills, the lineage improvement that they needed to say. So how do we get that to them right now? Of course, you can do that beforehand. You can do that in school. You can do all kinds of other things in society so that they are already better prepared. But even if you come in at the last minute, you can save most marriages. That's the problem with no-fault divorce. It's not lineage improvement development. It's a quick fix by politicians. That's the problem. Politicians can't fix these things. They have no realm of authority here. So this is the problem. So, and also, growing sentence, men are toxic. And we'll explain why that's coming later. But that's what's happening. So here, if you undermine all these things, marriage can't survive. It just can't. Because marriage can only survive on the basis of these inner elements. So that's what happened. You see, Divorce Reform Act here in England, 1969. The ability of people to marry and stay married. Here's this ability to marry. It's not just that the divorces went up, but abortion, came in here. So the ability of people to get married seriously got affected. And this is primarily in the lower class, primarily amongst the working class. The wealthy are still kind of doing very well, thank you. But these people are doing really poorly. And then, of course, divorces went up, and it kind of went down a bit, but that's because cohabitation kicked in here. So you don't see that on the data. So the actual rate is higher. So they undermined it. They took out those central elements of the three blessings. And so we saw drugs shoot up because the children weren't loved. They had this inner trauma, nobody loves me. My father didn't love me. It's a trauma. And that triggers all kinds of problems. Like trying to build a relationship with that as your central thing. Can I trust this person? Are they going to walk out like my dad? Any small signal that they might be disloyal or walking out triggers that. Comes out very negative. Oh, I'm going to back away right now because this is what my dad did to me. It's very painful to know somebody who created you doesn't love you. You can fall to pieces. You can get sucked into all kinds of worlds. This guy has 666 put on his head. 666. Okay. This is jail rates. So of course, as broken men had no fathers, no examples, no discipline, etc. This is what happened here, 1940, 60, and then yep. This is overdoses. Well, should I say, this is drug overdoses, deaths through. So 1970s to 2005, this is America. So unintentional drug overdoses. But, when you're a single, you're single, 45, you've raised your kids alone, and you feel, or you're a guy and you can't afford anymore to build a family because you have to pay to the child, the wife who walked out with the child, and you have to pay for that, and you can't build your own family. Things can get really, what's the point? You're only allowed to see the child once every 3 weeks, or this kind of thing. Where's your meaning in life? Say you have a job that isn't very good. A meaning comes through this family. It's the central core, and once you lose it, it's very hard. Now, when puffins lose their marital norm, because all the expenses involved with dealing with prisons, hospitals, extra hospitals, social workers, extra police, jails, you name it, this doesn't come cheap. A jail guy, 150,000 a year probably, A child, I looked at this data in Finland. They did a report. One child who didn't get that proper love at the age of 2, 3, can cost €1 million by the time it's 28. €1 million sucked out of the community because he didn't get a bit of love. That's how it multiplies. That's how the costs multiply out. It's that channel. And so England now is in a debt spiral it can't get out of. And so is all of Europe. It can't get out of it. Because the interest rate on this is 40 billion. That's as high as like the defense spending. Just the interest rate. And that's a historical low interest rate. If your economy goes forward, your interest rates go up. Your interest rate will have to go from 40 billion to 80 billion. So you have to find 40 billion more just because the economy is better before you can even start to pay off the debt. And it's just gone. It's just, and so they said, well, so we're spending 100 billion more a year than we're getting in. And we cost the government gets in about 750 billion a year. And it's spending 100 billion on top of that. 15% extra every year. And it said, we will bring a balanced budget by 2015 as conservatives. Then we said we'll do it by 2020, and they put a report last year, maybe we'll do it by 2045. We'll get it. But by 2045, can you imagine if there's an interest rate problem, how this will multiply quite quickly? It's a major difficulty for Western Europe and America, China too, but that's different reasons. But we can always sense this. You know, in Greece, when they went bankrupt, you can read stories of what happened when Greece went bankrupt, and you know, the hospital waiting times and the children being sold, given away. Couldn't afford them. Families moving back into one house, 4 or 5 families. Couldn't afford it. You know, of course, class sizes will rise. They're already complaining, etc. Fewer police. Now, I was so shocked coming back to England and saw a report. If you steal less than £200 worth of goods, the police won't consider it. Not worth it. Whew. Okay. Problematic. Okay. So this is where we're at today. Yeah. They've taken away the cultural Marxists have managed to convince us to leave the inner workings of marriage, and we can't work with that. It doesn't work. We can't build. So more and more people are saying, well, I'm doing what the cultural Marxists say, and I don't seem to be working. You know, I'm man-hating. I'm ungrateful. I'm doing what they say, and I can't build this marriage, you know. You know, or I'm sleeping around, having fun, a liberated woman, and then I try and doesn't work. Because why? Because your mentality is a completely non-marital mentality. It doesn't focus on the inner core strengths that bring about marriage. You just think, oh, the marriage is just signing the paper, isn't it? No. It has to contain the inner core values to understand the treasure and the value of marriage. And once you take those out, then you see, oh, I don't need those things, and then it doesn't work. So more and more people find it impossible to get married and stay married. And it just crumbles. So what happened in 2013 or so, about 5 years ago, which drew me into this world, I wasn't interested in particularly this, what I'm talking about today, until this happened when they redefined marriage to suit for same-sex couples. And I couldn't I said, well, this is okay. This is fine. There's no problem with that. But like, you know, when you read the Bible and other words, and they say there's real serious issues here. And you have to look at the negative consequences of that. So having kind of caught that there were negative consequences to abortion that extended out, I tried to understand, well, how does it affect everybody else? How does it hurt everybody else? Yeah, I wanted to look at that because I hadn't thought about that. Everybody says fairness. Yeah, it sounds fair. But I hadn't thought about how the consequences for the rest of society, how the forces going out would be generated and whether they be positive or negative. So I spent 2 years in my spare time looking at what would happen to society. I went, ooh, oh my gosh, how everybody else starts to have negative outcomes because of this. Oh, this isn't as easy as it looks. Okay? So when I try to understand what happens, see, once society is told you don't need premarital sex, it's not a big issue, yeah? Fidelity, you know, well, anyway, so a lot of people, and divorce, then you're just left with that and that, which is what gay unions are, fundamentally. We have some kind of attraction and we want to promise. Yeah? And then, over here, the purpose of marriage, because we had put in place, like abortion, which said an adult's happiness is more important than the child's well-being, And then in no fault divorce, we said adults' happiness is more important than the child's well-being. You can see the picture. Adults' happiness is more important than the child, which means you're saying adults' happiness today is more important than future cultural well-being. So the mentality of the West had come to the point of saying we don't need these internal workings, and the purpose of marriage is adult happiness. So of course we can extend that out, because that's what gay marriage is. But that doesn't work for puffins. Why? Because puffins have children. Puffins have children. They don't have premarital sex because they want to protect the child. They want to make sure that the child has a mother and father. They don't have infidelity and they don't divorce because they want to protect the heart of the child. You need it. If you're a puffin, you need these things to protect the culture, to protect the civilization, protect the marital norm. You can't take them out. Because you can't work a marriage based upon that and just say, well, we can have premarital and high divorce, and because the child gets hurt. There's too many single parents and there's too many divorces, and the child's attachment suffers and the culture decays. We can't afford that kind of definition of marriage, but that's what happened. So basically marriage defined came these two elements, and the primary purpose is for the sake of adult joy and the gaining of legal benefits. That's what marriage, but that's useless to puffins. You try building a marriage on that, and you can't do it. It doesn't last, because marriage only survives on the basis of the whole internal elements. It's how a marital culture survives. Take those elements away, and it struggles. So this legal difference is useless to heterosexuals. They're biological children to raise. What happens basically is heterosexuals, 98% who create the civilization and the culture as it goes forward, subconsciously feel less of a social push to marry. If marriage has no social dimension, not for the existence and the carrying on of the good and the chance for development, if it has no social purposes, you can't say a gay marriage has social purposes apart from them happiness, because they don't create children through which the future of the civilization develops. You can't say that they bring about the continued existence, continuity and development of a culture, because they don't have biological children. Can't say that. So all you do is basically cut puffins off from understanding their puffin norm. That's what you do. You said the government says this is what marriage is. We have a new legal definition. Marriage is this. It has no social purposes. It's just like you, and it's just like a man and woman just living together in friendship. It has that kind, with no babies, nothing, and etc., etc. It has no cross intergenerational development pattern. It's just like two widows living together, basically, you might say. They're good friends and they can do nice things in the community and they can do positive things. Fine. But it's through the child that the generations, the culture develops. It is through that. And the law cut people off from understanding that. But people don't understand that. So what happened? In all the countries where marriage has been redefined, this happened. Marital rapes. With no social purpose to marriage, people said, well, it's just a friendship. It really is just a piece of paper. So it's rather like same-sex marriage is like politicians telling members of the chess club that they now have to play by the rules of checkers, because the chess and checkers use the same board. You use the same board, so chess club members now have to, who have these complex rules, now have to run by these simple rules. And what would happen to the chess club? Would people join it? Would they say, yeah, I'm going to play chess because now we play by checkers rules? No. You say, what's the point? Because the rules are different. They have to keep different rules, keep them together. As a gay man, I can have as much premarital sex as I like. Doesn't create a child. I can have as much infidelity, and many do. But it doesn't create a child. They can divorce, and if they do have a child through some kind of means, the child usually goes with the biological father, so the child doesn't suffer an attachment loss because it didn't have a biological mother who created it. So it doesn't have the same it doesn't have the same dimensions. But what happened is that the word marriage got redefined, and so it's meaningless for heterosexuals. It has no purpose, social purpose, and it has no inner contents. And this is useless for us. It completely detaches us from the fact we're puffins. And society will more and more drift away. So what happens is that they enter into fragile. This is Spain. Exactly the same problem. The same graph for South Africa and other countries where they've introduced. Canada. Canada changed the metrics to hide the. It's really hard to find out what happened in Canada. I tried so hard because they were one of the first. But you can see, the way they changed the metrics. So you couldn't measure it. How it affects when you do something like that, how does it affect everybody else? Like when you have abortion, how does it affect everybody else? Because the forces are cultural and they spread out. So basically, because it was a total redefinition of the second blessing, or the middle blessing, it was a Marxist coup in disguise. It's just like the third blessing was internal elements were redefined. We saw that. So it was unusable. The second blessing, internal elements are redefined, taken out. So it's unusable. So heterosexuals can't use it to build a culture. So basically what you've got a definition of marriage that your civilization can't use to build a civilization. Just like you've got economic laws you can't use to build economic growth, you have a definition of marriage now that you can't use to build civilization. In fact, it's just a socially decaying. It's decay written into the law. And anybody who challenges it is called a bigot. You're hurting adults. No, you're hurting children because the parents can't now access the proper definition of marriage to protect children. Well, this is the battle in all these issues. Who gets hurt, adults or children? And the consequences for children are far worse than somebody having their feelings hurt. Their drugs, their lifetime on jail, there's all kinds of negative. It's far worse for children. And that's what happens in cohabitation, because more and more children are left without parents, and their life, many of them, are tragedies. They're not just having their feelings hurt. This is lifelong. They can't build a marriage. Loneliness, alcoholism, lots of different problems involved. Self-harm. So you have to look how the consequences of these laws and how they hurt the wider community, because everything that flows through the family has a cultural effect of existence, sustainability, and development. So, what happened? Because it is a Marxian law, what happened? Well, in Russia, what happened after the Marxists took over? What did they do? They blew up almost every church in Russia. I think 50 churches. I don't know. Don't quote me on this. Very few are left. They destroyed Christianity. Why? Because Marxism and Christianity cannot coexist. Because can't coexist because they're different laws. They're different species norms. We'll talk about this afternoon what species the Marxist thing represents. But it's not puffinism. So you can't have it. It's like two species fighting. It's like cats and puffins. They will eat it. One will eat it. And that's what happens. They can't coexist. That's why Israel and and Judaism are at each other because they run on different species norms. One's polygamous and one's monogamous. Islam, and that's why they can't coexist. It's two different species. And just like two species, you won't hurt your own species probably, but you'll eat that one. They're running on different species norms. So what happens is that species norm is not allowed here. We're a different species. We'll talk about it this afternoon. And therefore, Christianity cannot exist. And what we would do is we go into the schools and teach everybody about Marxist rules. Marxist thinking, which is not Puffinism. And that's what allowed this. After redefining a marriage, we got the politicization of the school curriculum. And we get the sexual thing, which basically says, you see, we're not a puffin species. We're a different species. You can have as much sex as you like. We're a different species. And that's what happens. So once Marxism comes in, because it's not based on Puffinism at all, it allows the political activists of Marxism to enter the schools via anti-bullying programs. We're anti-bullying, and then we're going to teach you all this sexual stuff and social justice warrior stuff and everything. Yeah, go abortion. Yeah. Because there's nothing to do with Puffinism. If you saw puffins kicking their eggs off the ledges, you would know something's wrong with that puffin community. Wouldn't you? You'll say, well, why are you cooking? What's the problem with you puffins? What's wrong with you? What's culturally gone wrong? What's affecting you? You got some kind of virus? Why are you kicking your eggs off? Why are you delaying your, puffins, as soon as they reach maturity, they try and find out. And what happens if they don't get puffins decide until they're 50, almost too old to have babies, and they can just have one or two? You would know there's something gone wrong with puffin community. That's what we've done. So because it is a Marxist coup, then it can enter the schools and start re-indoctrination of Marxism, which says we are not puffins, we are something else. Huh? Oh, social justice warrior. I fight for social justice, which means I fight for Marxists, abortions and feminism and et cetera, gay rights. Okay? So also, in the West, our first blessing has been under attack, violently so, again by the cultural Marxists. As I said, we have kindness core values, self-initiated development, etc. So just take an example. So we have the Ten Commandments, which we know builds communities. The Jewish built a very sustainable community on it, and we've taken it as a basis for a community building. Works. So what do? You undermine it. You get rid of it. There are timeless core values which you have to follow. No, we're socially constructed. There's no God. Respect your parents. They're rubbish. They're patriarchal, kind of, old stuff. We're wiser. I saw my son reading this stuff, which destroyed his connection with me. It was awful. We had constant arguments over it. No stealing. Well, yeah, you can tax the rich as much as you like, and basically, all the wealthy, whatever. No murder. Yeah, we can commit abortion and euthanasia. It's tragedy what's happening in Holland and Belgium now. Anybody read up on the euthanasia debate? Just more, because there's so much money involved. And more, get another one in. Try another one. It's just like this late-term abortion, If we can push it longer, we'll make more money from it. Don't spread false rumors. You're a bigot. No, I care about children because they're the future. Don't be jealous. The whites have more than us. No, those who practice puffin norms have more than you. So Asians in America are the richest group from Korea and China. Why? Because they practice family norms and free market, and in a free market economy, they're happy bunnies. It's nothing to do with white. It's to do with the privilege that comes with power. And a lot of the black community has been destroyed by abortion, destroyed their puffin norm. They can't get God's blessings. It's nothing to do with color. It's to do with how you exemplify the three blessings. Yeah? And so you've got one side of society saying this and the other side saying this, and you can't build community because these are the fundamental things that build community. The principle of creation goes into this, this love and beauty. It's a central core axis through which God comes down, God's blessing comes down. It's a central core axis for everything we do in all our relationships. And so you've got to help people grow through giving of themselves and developing themselves, and through appreciation. Appreciation of the chances they have, appreciation of life, and it gives them energy and it gives them more thing. So this is a basic dynamic that has to be destroyed. And so, you know, you don't have to give more. You can take all the drugs you like. You can sleep around all you like. You can do whatever you like. You don't have to grow. You just have to vote for this politician and believe in this social justice, and you will be a good citizen. Oh, that's all I have to do? Protest with a sign? I feel so good. I'm good. Where's that cannabis, you know? That's what they're taught today in America. Many schools. And of gratitude for America. Anybody see the speech, Trump's speech? How one side sat down, you know, just astounding. And then I saw this astounding video. It was a school in San Francisco, California, I think it was. And there was this, they had just banned the Pledge of Allegiance in the school. They called it hate speech, the Pledge of Allegiance. And there's this one poor, I think she was a teacher, standing there, and all the, you know, social justice people banning it. No more Pledge of Allegiance in the school. And she was standing there and said, I'm going to read to you the Pledge of Allegiance because I love my country and I really love it. And they're all booing her. And she was fighting against all these forces. To love your country, love what the goodness in your country. You've got to love it to keep it going. You've got to value it to say, I treasure that, and how do I develop it? But if you say, well, it's just all racism, it's all that, you know, you don't see the good. So they destroy that. Difficulties are there to grow. Yes, difficult. No, you're oppressed. Oppressed. Don't even try. The whites have oppressed you. And forgiveness, forget it. So you destroy that. Then we have transgender theory. This is a really nasty one. This is enough to bring a civilization down in two generations. I tell you, this is powerful stuff. This is really, really insidious. This is a destruction of mind and body unity. And mind and body unity is the basis for everything we do. Everything. If I say something to Ron and I keep my promise, it keeps social trust. My body and my mind are unified. If I say something and I don't do it, he gets hurt. My body is not unified. And when you base a law upon that principle, you can't. Everything it touches disintegrates. It's like antimatter. It's antimatter for society. It's a long story, but basically what they're saying now, the theory is basically says a transsexual is a fruitful citizen. They're a happy, fruitful citizen who's in the right body. Yeah, they're in the right body of the right sex, so they have their operations, and a fruitful citizen is a person who can't have kids, is often jobless, often depressed, may have serious health issues, and may commit suicide. This is a definition of fruitfulness. Duh. And we accept it. Our lawmakers are accepting it. It's like a virus. It's like we were talking earlier about this fly that lays an egg inside like a caterpillar or something like that, and slowly the caterpillar has controlled by this fly baby and becomes a zombie. and does things that it would never do. It's like a zombie virus. So you get the World Health Organization. You just see these beautiful pictures, this beautiful hall, hundreds of eminent doctors and medical specialists there. They're all standing there and all sitting there, and it's $1 billion worth of stuff there and everything, and they're proclaiming, men can get pregnant. What? What just happened? What's this virus? Are you deluded? Are you mad? It gets people to say things that are just so ridiculous, yeah? So it violates this property, this mind and body unity, because it basically says the body is not important. It says body's not there. So when they look at people, they just see your mind. What do you say you are? What do you say you are? Are you a man or a woman? Can I know? I don't know. What are you, man or woman? Well, thank you, but I can ask somebody and they're a woman now, yeah? I can't count the body in. So there's no body. But body is the basis of our science. Yeah, I make a theory and then I see if it works in practice. Yeah? So I have to see that mind and body unity in practice. But if you don't have a body, now when you say you're a woman, you will be, when I do research, I have to do tests with you in the subset because you're a woman. So how does that affect the research findings? Because certain drugs are good for men and certain drugs are good for women, but they're not. Yeah? And if I don't include you, I'm called a bigot or a transphobe. So what am I? And my career's ruined. So what do I do? So everything it touches, women's swimming pools, psychological sciences, biological sciences, everything it touches becomes like chaos. Women's sports. You know, you see a man fighting a woman. Well, who wants to watch that? Well, can you imagine next Olympics, China turns up and the whole Olympic team is trans women? We have 800 trans women in our country. They're all women. And they're all great big, you know. And what can you say? Oh, no, I think you're cheating here. No, they're all trans women, I promise you. And they win all the golds. Who's going to watch Olympics? Ruins everything. Biological sciences, children's lives. Children now 4 years old are being rushed off. And they're experimenting with womb and penis transplantation. They're experimenting taking the womb of a child and putting it into cross. So if you're a boy and you start playing with girls' toys, you might end up with a transplanted womb because it's better than a penis which has been. This is happening, folks. This is destruction. Everything transgender will destruct. It's like antimatter. Destroyed. So, what is the root of this politicization process? So what is its core root? This is a politicization of everything. So everybody's involved. Businesses are involved in politics, you know. Social justice businesses and schools are involved in politics now. And everybody, well, what's the root cause of it? Well, normally the political room should be interested in this, the child. How do we improve the ability of the child to be more noble? That's the normal state of affairs. State is interested in child welfare, in lineage improvement. It's not interested in adult relationships per se. It cannot evaluate adult relationships. If you're two males just living in the same house, having a friendship, having a good time, or two widows enjoying each other, the state isn't interested in that, is it? You're just two people living. It's not interested in adult relationships per se, it's interested in the welfare of the child, because if through the child, it comes future development. If the child is better developed, and the child's development is based upon this man and woman being there, because of attachment trauma. So the only reason it's interested in this adult relationship because of the child. Because if they get it wrong, the child hurts, So it's only interested in the child. That's where it's interested. You catch that? Yeah? It's in that. It supports this because this child depends on this. So it's not interested in adult. It's not interested in my friendships. Not interested in my bowls club, my bridge club. Not interested. No reason to be, because you can't evaluate one versus the other. You know. Is a child being raised by its two parents? That's the question. Can we support this? The natural flow of energy is from parents' sacrifice for the child. That's the natural flow. Parents sacrifice, the child gets better outcome, improved lineage, natural flow, life continues. In its family lawmaking, when it makes laws on the family, it's the state steps in and says the child has to be sacrificed for adults. That's what happens. The child has to be sacrificed for adults. And the child, because it is sacrificed, suffers lineage decline and culture goes into decline. So the state comes in and acts like God, and it reverses natural law. It reverses the flow of energy. So adults' desires come before child well-being. Society decays, but this politicizes all of society. Why? Because you have a cultural debate. The debate starts. Are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to sacrifice a child for the sake of the adult happiness? And some people say yes, and some people say no. And then you end up in a cultural war. That's what happens. And that's what's happening today. So you have businesses who say, yes, we support social justice warriors and etc., and sacrificing the child for adult desires. We're the good people because we care about adults. But underneath it all, the children are getting sacrificed. So if you think about all the atrocities of history, like the concentration camps where people died, slavery, gassing of World War II, and Christian persecution, we're doing this to children today. That's what we're doing. All of them. So we commit infanticide. We've committed in America 70 million, Europe about the same, not to mention, that's way beyond the 7 million of the concentration, but that's the same as like Russian gulag. That's how many we killed. Since they've been introduced in 1968, 5 or something like that, yeah. That's how many we killed. That's our population. Our population would be 100 million more. We wouldn't need to take in immigrants to sustain our societies. But we killed them. We're here, we now buy and sell them. We buy and sell children from the surrogacy. Do they want to be separated from the love of their mother? You ask them. They've got websites now. I was separated from the love of my mother at birth, and I hurt. And I want my mother's love, because I go to my friend's house and she gets a mother's hug. And I can't tell this to my gay parents. And when I do, they tell me I'm bigoted. But they can't take that away from a child. So this is like a slavery. It's that you were bought, you have to listen. You have to follow what we say. And here, when you teach same-sex to boys, there's so many diseases involved, AIDS. Just by the actual practice, just you get diseases. All kinds of cancers evolve. You don't have to go with anybody else. It just happens. And so by teaching this, you're kind of like killing all, these boys will die before their parents. Because the average age of homosexual death is 20 years younger than normal. And what's happening? So everybody's drawn in. All social institutions, businesses, everybody. What do? Do we support the adults or support the children? And that's what happens. So the whole of culture becomes politicized. It's just like the socialism, like Marxism in Russia. Yeah, all the social institutions got politicized. Everybody was involved. And what happened? You get to that, because this is Puffinism. and it says you shouldn't sacrifice a child. And those who say we can sacrifice a child say you're nasty people. That's what happens. Okay? So, this is where we're at. I didn't want to show this picture, but I thought it would be good. This is the proud, confident women, the social justice warriors, you might say, of the 1940s, and this is where we go today. It's obscene because it's obscene and it's the wrong picture, but it kind of shows where we're going. You're not bringing up noble people. You're not ennobling them, which is the way culture goes forward. This is not ennobling. But that's what happens when you sacrifice a child for the parent. So most of these people come from probably distressed families. Perhaps I would guess most of them. They weren't loved. They don't know what nobility is. That's what happens. So we have all these laws which say we can sacrifice a child. And you have to decide what you do about that. Okay? So thank you very much.